Hello and welcome in, everybody. It's our special stage podcast for yet another fortnight. A couple of weeks fly by and we're hitting record again already, so there's plenty to talk about, of course. This week's things are a little bit different though. It's just me here today and I'll run through some of my thoughts of WRC Italy and the happenings of the rally world. So apologies if the episode is slightly shorter than normal. It'll be back in its full length next time, but we'll see how we go with a bit of a monologue here and a discussion about the WRC. Will bring out a lot of thoughts, I'm sure, and we can all ponder about power stage rules and Sunday itineraries and the like. Before we do that, our friends at Max Cases are continuing on their support of the podcast, and we thank them for doing that. Of course, it's great to be able to have a sponsor to be able to help us produce these episodes, so it's that support that might just get it into a week-by-week thing. A week-by-week podcast would be quite nice, but we'll wait and see where things take us. We might need a bit more support, but we'll hopefully get it to week by week and give you some more rallying content from Australia, New Zealand and around the world. We'll have to wait and see. Make sure you jump on their website, maxcase.com.au. You probably memorise that by now from the ads, so if you haven't looked already, take a look and grab yourself a case for photography gear, for keeping your tools in the service park. They're great products, so jump on and take a look at those. WRC Italy, the Rally Italia Sardegna. Well, where do we start about that one? At one point, I wasn't sure whether the rain would come. Now, that was probably a bit foolish of me, to be honest, and to think that way. I guess Friday morning was dry, but when the rain did come, though, it well and truly bucketed down. And really it made the event from a spectator's point of view, because sometimes on those European gravel rallies that drivers have done 6, 7, 8 times, if there's simply just the road sweeping to spice things up, then maybe you get a bit bored by Saturday and you turn off WRC Plus all live and you just check the results of the morning. But really the water, and the water splashes in particular, kept us all, made sure we couldn't miss a second. I remember back to Kenya a couple of years ago, might have even been last year, when the WRC has returned and the rain was of a similar style there, and dry one minute, pouring with rain the other, and all of a sudden there's pools of water lying in the ruts on the road, and it's almost like a precursor to Rally Kenya that's coming up as the next round of the World Championship. There's been rain in Italy, it falls hard on the rally in Sardinia, and if anybody, the Toyota drivers are probably going to have to learn to navigate water splashes a little bit better. I'm not sure on the rainfall on Jyväskylä or Estonia where the Toyota team is based, but yeah, they've got to get some issues rectified before Kenya, because if they keep going into water splashes and losing power, and in some cases damaging the car and retiring the car, then they're going to be tricky cars to keep going in Kenya. Long gone are the days of the snorkel in the WRC, and I'm not sure we're going to see that on the Toyotas, the Hyundais or the Fords, but it's a really important talking point, I guess, going into Safari, particularly if there is rain that's going to fall. Now, Hyundai, it was really just a perfect weekend for them. There's not too much to talk about. Maybe you could talk about the team orders that may or may not have come. Esa-Pekka Lappi clearly slowed down a little bit because he knew that he would have to give up his position at some point to Thierry Neuville. But for those guys to have the car in a good spot, to be able to set faster stage times and to finish first and second, it's a good spot for them to be in. They would have loved for the Fords to get good results, because in reality they only took back 7 points in the Manufacturers' Championship to Toyota. They've got a bit of a deficit at the minute, but if they're only going to get that deficit down by 7 points on each occasion, it's going to be a long haul to get them back into the manufacturer's fight. They really need Ott Tänak, Pierre-Louis Loubet and the Fords to get good results as well, to bump those Toyotas down the leaderboard. Lots are saying their praises about Loubet that I mentioned just before, and I agree. A full weekend with some luck will be important for him, but yeah, he's put it off the road a couple of times. He's had unfortunate errors and mechanical failures that have really set him back, and I don't know where his confidence is at the minute. It's hard hard to really judge because, yes, he's won stages on both the previous two events that are gravel events, but yeah, we'll wait and see. The car does seem to have some issues. Now, Whitten does seem to be slipping a bit in the title race. Is it the car? Is it him? It's probably a combination of both, I say, but the constant mechanical issues of the Puma have really got to be worrying him, don't they? But then again, it's not a first for the Puma, right? The constant mechanical issues that Loeb had last year and Breen and Greensmith, there was always issues that propped up in 2022 that haven't been fixed for this year. Now, there might not be the same issues, but there's issues nonetheless. It's got to be weighing on his mind. Now, we can debate all day about drivers saving tyres on the Sunday of a WRC event, but really that's a topic that's been covered in so much detail everywhere. The good thing that's happening is clearly the drivers are meeting with the promoter, and that is chaired by Petter Solberg, who's clearly a well-respected and well-liked person in the sport. So I think the changes to Sunday, the changes to the format are really going to be important to make soon, because drivers are coming out and they're saying that it's just not good enough. How fast can a change be made? Well, itineraries are out for the next 4 rounds. I just had a look before I hit record here, and the next 4 rounds of the championship have been revealed and their itineraries are set. So maybe the changes aren't going to come so quickly, but the promoter is under big pressure to do something. Like I said, Neuville, Ogier and Rovanperä have all spoken about how things have to change. And I've got to say, something's probably got to be done for Estonia. That's at least a month away. There's some time to adjust itineraries, adjust regroups, change things into a tyre zone, and perhaps make that last regroup before the power stage also a tyre zone. Something that popped up on international website Dirtfish, the rumour of Kalle Rovanperä heading to Hyundai. I don't know what to make of it. It's probably just a bit of a beat up in terms of his manager, which is Timo Joki, the famous Finnish manager, putting it out there to try and get some money from Toyota, a bit of extra money from Toyota, maybe to scare them in terms of the fact that, well, they lost Whitten for not paying him enough money. And yes, I know there was some difficulties elsewhere there, but yeah, Rovanperä to Hyundai. Maybe it's just a bit of a tactic from the Rovanperä team, but I don't see him moving from Toyota. He's got the best car. The car's going to be built around him for however long he wants. So we'll wait and see what happens. I was surprised when Whitten went to Hyundai, of course. We all were. Kalle Rovanperä, I think, is a bit much. I'm not sure Toyota and Jari-Matti Latvala will get rid of him like that. Now the ARC, we're moving to Australia. Now we're almost 10 minutes into the podcast and talking about some Australian stuff here. MRF tyres for 2024 to 2026. It's the new ZG3 pattern. I think it's good news. You've got to really give credit to Tony Sallins and to the team that have been able to secure that right. And like what somebody said on one of our Facebook posts, that Tony is a rally guy. So we've got to think that before we make any judgments. He knows the tyre. He knows the rallying landscape. It's important to take the last MRF rain and the last MRF tyre and make sure that we keep that in our memory somewhere, but we need to understand too that it's a new tyre, it's a new supplier, it's a new person who's dealing with the MRF ARC control tyre this time around, and yeah, new tyres. We'll see how they fare up against the Hoosiers that were here for the last few years, and we'll wait and see with how things are rolling there. We also put up on our website that there was interest from Maxxis, a left field name that really, when we started doing our research here at Rally Sport Mag about who might have bid for the tyre supplier and who might have had interest in putting in an application for the tender, Maxxis wasn't a name that we were going to think of. Peter, like you might have read if you're a Rally Sport Magazine subscriber, spoke to the importer for Maxxis tyres and they had a long, hard think about it. Maybe Maxxis tyres are the next brand to come into Australia at a state level or a club level. So Max's tyres. It was an interesting one for me to hear, that's for sure. Tasmanian charger Eddie Maguire has bought the active rally sport Skoda. It's well known as the ex-Harry Bates Rally New Zealand car, and Troy Dow competed in it in the first 2 rounds of the Australian Championship this year. I think that simply springboards Eddie into a top 3 position. I really do. I think that puts him immediately into the fight with Harry and Lewis Bates, and also Nathan Quinn. Maybe that's a bit optimistic for Eddie. I know he's not going to be putting any expectations onto him, but the speed that he showed in the ex-Molly Taylor car, the Orange Motorsport Engineering car in Western Australia, was simply amazing. Now he's going to get some testing time before Rally Queensland in that new Skoda, and he's got so much talent. So maybe by the end of Rally Queensland he'll be up there and perhaps a Heat 2 podium. I think it really springboards him up the leaderboard, and it adds another person to the equation in terms of who can win stages and who can win heats in the ARC. Last of all, before I get into the interview with Ben Searcy that I recorded a couple of days ago, we've started a bit of a feature focus on some old Junior Rally Challenge winners. As you would be aware, our old publication Australian Rally Sport News ran the Junior Rally Challenge and unearthed some very, very talented rally drivers in the 1990s and early 2000s. The first one that we've got up there is about a young man who won it in 1997, I believe, off the top of my head, Rowan Quill Jr. So he's done some things away from rallying. He's came back to rallying as well. So now he's competing in Victoria again, which is great to see. And the next one on our list is Jason Walk, who won the Junior Challenge as well. We've spoken to him and got some information and been able to put together a great feature on him, and the names just keep on coming who won that. We're going to speak to all of them we can and catch up with them with what they've been doing in the years since those Junior Rally Challenge days. All right, that's the first half of the podcast done for this week. We'll be keeping you up to date with all things rallying on rallysportmag.com. And until next fortnight, enjoy the Ben Searcy podcast, and we'll speak to you soon. Ben Searcy, thanks so much for taking some time out. It's nice to chat to you again. How are things?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, Luke. Great. Yeah, just come off the Forest Rally last week, which was a challenging event for us, but no, all going well, thanks.
We'll chat about that and about a few things today, and there's some questions I want to ask, obviously, that I've had on my mind for a while. You've been one since the start of the Special Stage podcast that I've wanted to have on. I'm looking forward to getting into it. First of all, how did you get into rallying? Was your family involved in the sport, or was it not such a simple process to get involved?
No, it wasn't but my family wasn't involved in rally, so I'm one of the unusual people around the place that didn't come through that family connection. So I had a mate at school, and his family were quite involved in it. And when, as a lot of young people in Western Australia at that time, Rally Australia was here, the WRC round, they were volunteer marshals and did a road closure point. So back in I think it was mid-90s or so, I did my first road closure at a rally with him and his parents, and yeah, fell in love with it after that. So we were actually stationed at the spot where tragically the accident where Possum Bourne and Roger Freeth was killed. That was our road closure spot. We didn't actually see the accident. We were around the corner taking some photos of cars. But yeah, so I fell in love with rally that day after the whole day, and thought, yeah, I've got to get into this somehow.
It's a negative involvement, first of all, and you wouldn't have known the impact of such an accident early on, because clearly then you weren't a rally person. But getting into the sport now must be, I don't know what the right word is, but not ironic, but you know what I mean. It's a difficult start to get into the sport now that you know the history behind that day.
Yeah, that's right. And certainly at the time didn't realise the magnitude of what had happened and what was going to happen. But I'd always loved motorsports and cars. So I mean, I started off doing circuit racing before I went into rally, and had always, just even as a little kid, loved cars in general. And then that love of cars turned to motorsports, of course, and circuit racing was easier. As someone whose family wasn't involved, circuit racing was a hell of a lot easier as a 16-year-old. When I put my first car together to go and race, in terms of accessibility to racetracks and logistics and the like.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until probably a few years into circuit racing where I kept on getting hit by other people that I thought, wow, I got to change this. The only way I can not get hit by other people is to be on the track on my own, one at a time. And what's that all about? Rally. So that's why I decided to go and have a crack at that.
Exactly right. It's a hard thing to get into even back then, and nowadays it's again much harder. Was it a slow burn once you got rallying? I know you started as a driver, and then the co-driving, I guess, came after that. Was it all in from the start? Did you love it straight away?
Yeah, definitely loved it straight away. Early on in the piece, I decided we need to go and do ARC level stuff and got together with Bernie Webb actually as my first major co-driver back in those days in the Suzuki, and we headed off and did some rallies together. I always thought rally was the way to go. I love the teamwork that we do together as a driver and a co-driver, and I love the real importance of the team that you have competing together.
A young Ben was behind the wheel of a Suzuki Swift, I believe. Tell me a bit about that car. You've come from a base of club rallying and a Suzuki Swift onto some amazing cars. What was that Swift like to start with?
Yeah, I was just talking about this Swift the other day to the boys at the workshop. I'm not sure where it is. I sold the last version of the Swift I had. I sold it, and I've never seen it come out and do a rally anywhere. It went to someone on the East Coast, but yeah, the Swift was a good, fun little car. It was definitely a 1.3 GTI screaming engine. You just had to keep it up around the 8,000 revs, 9,000 revs all day. That, though, in comparison to some of the cars in recent years, the AP4 cars and the R5 cars that I've been competing in and co-driving in over the last few years, yeah, they're just a completely different kettle of fish. I think front-wheel drive, everyone in Western Australia, I talked earlier on about Rally Australia and the WRC being here, everyone over here at that time had front-wheel drive cars because the ambition was to get into the WRC and do Rally Australia as a minimum.
Yeah.
And so over here you had lots of people running Di Tommaso Charades, Hyundai Elantras, Suzuki Swifts, front-wheel drive Corollas and the like, because they were homologated and they were the only cars you could take in to the WRC event if you wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I noticed, that all of the drivers on this side of the country were well, not all, but most of them were driving the front-wheel drive cars, as opposed to perhaps on the East Coast where most people were driving Datsuns and rear-wheel drive type cars at that time.
It's a different part of the world, and I guess your goals are different, like you say. But crossing with Bernie Webb early doors, you were driving, he was co-driving. I hate to bring up the number of years, but that's more than 20 years ago. Did you think that one day you might get into co-driving and alongside Bernie be one of the top co-drivers in Australia? Was that a general path that you saw, or did it just happen naturally?
No, so I actually got involved with a Japanese rally team that came to Rally Australia each year, and brought a few cars down. And I started co-driving with them and helping them out, not only logistically here in Perth, but also I started to co-drive. And so I did maybe 3 or 4 Rally Australias with a couple of Japanese drivers and really quite enjoyed it. And then after that, I think it was 2004 or something, a mate of mine who was also used to rally for Steve Forsberg had a car and he wanted to do Rally of Canberra. And so he said, "You've done a bit of co-driving now, come over and do some co-driving with me." And so I went over and did a few events with him, and we got on, of course, well as mates anyway. And I thought, no, maybe I can make it a bit further in this sport as a co-driver. And so hence that was where we actually had a wheel fall off the car in Rally of Canberra, I think it was. And the same spot where one of the Subaru RS Challenge competitors, Graham Vaughan, he had also had an accident, a minor off, and we got chatting at that point. And he said, "Oh, you want to be a co-driver? Come and do the rest of the ARC with me." So I did the ARC with him in that particular year, and then subsequently met another competitor in the RS Subaru Challenge, of which there's a whole pile of them that we're all still mates over the years, many, many years later, Benny Turan. And Benny was lucky enough to win the scholarship for Subaru in the following year, which is then when I started doing co-driving professionally with him in 2005 onwards. So yeah, it was a I didn't picture myself as being a co-driver. I always wanted to drive, but
Mhm.
I've absolutely loved every minute of co-driving and the opportunities that I've had and the places that it has taken me all around, the whole of Japan and Indonesia, Malaysia and New Zealand, New Caledonia, and all of those countries over many years has been, yeah, something I didn't expect, but been awesome.
Right after you secured your Australian title with Eli Evans, I don't think you've done an ARC round since then as a co-driver. Why did you want to go back behind the wheel and give driving another crack?
So I'd had that Evo 9 as a tarmac rally car
Yeah.
and had done a fair few Targa Tazas, Targa High Countries, and the Targa series around the place,
Mhm.
and noted that at that time the Targa rules kept on changing, and every year they would change the car regulations to some extent, which was quite the most expensive thing for me was readjusting the car or setting the car up differently, either putting extra weight in, changing the fuel type, or whatever it might have been, and the subsequent costs that went along with that. So I thought, well, what better platform at that time to build into a gravel car?
Mm.
So put the car into gravel spec over a couple of seasons, thinking, oh, it won't cost that much. It's pretty much already ready to go. Ended up costing a lot of money and taking a lot of time to
Mm.
do that. But yeah, I think decided that year with after that year with Eli, I'd learned so much stuff from so many different drivers at that point that it was time to have a go on the gravel again. And yeah, subsequently started competing in the West Australian Championship 2019 onwards.
Mm. I'm sure a state title exceeded your expectations, though. Did you go in thinking about winning a state title, or did it
Oh, not
come out of the
initially.
blue, really?
Not initially. I mean, it
Okay.
certainly was the plan as the years went on. I think
Yeah.
2019, the first year we got second. I think I got second each year in the championship, 2019, 2020, and 2021.
Mhm.
And then I thought we just need to push a bit more, prepare a bit better, and make sure we finish every rally.
Mhm.
Um, and then we could win the championship, which we did manage to do last year, which was great. I mean, to be on the state championship trophy for both a co-driver, as a co-driver previously, and as a driver, for me was pretty. I was surprised that it hadn't been done before, but it was pretty cool. Mm.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to be able to have the skills to do the co-driving and also the driving. Now, as a driver, you're going to look for a number of skills in a co-driver, but because of your experience, there's things that I'm sure you're looking for when notes are being called to you and stuff like that. You've got Queenslander Brad Jones alongside you this year. What do you look for in him, or what do you ask of him in terms of the notes, in terms of how things are organized? Do you have certain things that you're looking for?
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure if you asked him, he would tell you something different.
Yeah.
I think I'm fairly easy to co-drive for. I think I wanted to give Brad an opportunity to learn a bit as well from me.
Yeah.
He's got ambitions to compete overseas and internationally as well, and he already has done that, and he's
Yeah.
already competed in Europe before, and he's done the ARC for a couple of years. So I thought he was a really good option. It's tough to find co-drivers at the moment.
Mm.
And when my co-driver from last year switched teams to a different team this year and left, I thought I needed to find someone that I could develop a bit into the way that I like to do things, but also develop them in their ability as a co-driver and their skill set. Yeah, Brad's done a tremendous job in terms of what he delivers on the pace notes with the couple of rallies that we've done
Mm.
so far this year. And yeah, I think he's done a really good job.
I'm sure the driving and the co-driving is on point, but the car hasn't been on point so far this year, unfortunately. We won't dwell on it too much, but what's next on the rally calendar? You mentioned about the engine that's going to need to be rebuilt. Does that put the next rally a little bit further back on the calendar?
Well, we this year I'm co-driving for Alex Rouleau in the WA Rally Championship, so I knew that I couldn't compete here in WA in these events. So we chose to do the South Australian Championship. It's our neighbours, despite being a 2.5 day drive away. They're our neighbours, and I thought that would be the easiest championship to get into next. And I think three of their rallies, especially the Barossa Valley rally, uses all those old Rally SA roads that we used to use back in the day. And when I'd been on them as a co-driver, I thought, yeah, I definitely want to get over and do that event. So the next event in their championship's not till, I think, mid to end of August. So we have got a bit of time. We have got a fair bit of work to do, as you said, rebuilding an engine, which did some damage at Forest Rally. We've also had some braking and handling issues over the last couple of rallies as well, which we haven't been able to pinpoint. Not sure if it's in the diffs or in something else. So we have got a fair bit of work to do, but at this stage, touch wood, hopefully everything goes to plan. We should be at the next SA Championship round in August.
Fantastic. With that result early on at Rally of the Heartland, it wasn't a great one. The brakes, and I think there was a misfire as well. Is there a championship still on the cards there? Do you think that maybe with a couple of good rounds to finish the year, you'll be able to come home with that?
Oh, well, I mean, look, you never know. Anything is possible, but I think you'd be silly to think that you can go to do a championship with new rallies first up on the first year and win a championship. Obviously, locals know the conditions. They know the roads. They've driven them many times. And when you're learning, no matter how good you are at pace noting or how good you are at preparation and experience, you still always, I believe, you should take a 2 to 3 year plan to come into something. Go out there, learn everything, learn the events, learn the roads, and then go back and have a crack next time.
So is the 2 to 3 year plan for you to keep going across to South Australia? Is that what you've indicated there to me?
I mean, look, anything's possible if there's, I think we've managed to win the WA Championship. I think this is a really awesome championship that we have here in WA, fully pace noted, some beautiful roads, really well organised events. The ability to race on those old roads that Rally Australia used to use back in the day that are very dear to my heart. It's good to do a new challenge and good to do something different. There's also some other rallies. I just love doing new rallies as well. That's why I've loved to go competing as a co-driver, even internationally, to do new rallies. So to do those new rallies in South Australia is going to be a great opportunity. But then there's also, I'm no spring chicken anymore, as you mentioned before. It was a while. I have been rallying for a fair while. You don't know how long you can keep going for. But there's rallies which I've never done before, like Bega, Bateman's Bay, and those sorts of events. I've done Yarra Rally many times, co-driving with Brendan Reeves and the like, but never actually driven in it. I'd love to just go and select some rallies around the place and just cruise on over and do them as well. So who knows?
All part of the bucket list, which for everyone, I'm sure, in the rallying world is nice and long. Riding with some of the best guys in Australia must have given you great experience for your driving and for how you can drive. I was lucky enough to sit with Simon Evans in Canberra in 2016 in your seat. That was my first ride with a top driver, and I guess I was blown away with the speed and what was possible. Had I not done that, I probably wouldn't have truly understood how fast a car could be driven. Do you think getting in the seat with those top drivers has been able to make you faster and think, okay, well, I can carry this much speed through a corner, I can do this, I can do that? Does it make you a better driver?
Oh, I think without a doubt, it's like the best driving lessons I possibly could have had is to be sitting next to these guys and girls for in years gone by. Yeah, Simon, Eli, Nathan Quinn, Brendan Reeves, Rifat from Indonesia, Jean-Louis Leroux from New Caledonia, Emma Gilmore in New Zealand. I mean, all of those drivers are sensational, and that's not everyone that I've been competing with, but those ones just spring to mind as super quick drivers in their respective events.
Was there anything in particular that you've taken from one of those drivers or from a few of those drivers that you've put into your driving?
Yeah, I think so. I think say Brendan Reeves and Eli, really, really particular and accurate pace noting. Consistent and accurate pace noting and preparation wise, those guys are right on top of that. Then you look at someone like Simon, who it's just all about road position. So where the car is positioned on the road, which then I can reflect. I've reflected those sorts of things in my pace notes to making particular road position type comments and the like, and how important that is. And then someone like Nathan Quinn is just how everything is so straightforward and simple, and he just gets on and does the job. So they've all got attributes of different attributes, but I've taken something from pretty much everyone.
You sort of answered one of my next questions here, was about the Evans brothers. Their strengths are a little bit different, like you say. Eli and Simon, of course, we're talking about. You co-drove for both of them for a length of time, and I think you're the only person to have done both. From the outside and from my dealings with them, Simon seems to just get in the car and drive it flat out, whereas Eli is the more measured driver. Did it feel that way when you were beside them?
Yeah, I think they both have really different strengths. I
Okay.
think if you were to go, here's the same car on the same bit of road,
Mhm.
um, you'd get Eli preparing and getting really ready for it, and he would do an equal time to Simon, whereas Simon would just jump in the car and he'd go flat out just on by the seat of his pants, and he's just got that absolute natural ability to go flat out from the get-go.
Yeah. You're an Australian champion with Eli in 2018. We mentioned that before. What was that year like? And what was it like to win the Australian Championship after a long year, and in fact a car change mid-year as well?
Yes, we did. We started in the Mini, I think, that year.
Yeah.
So we'd done a few events in the Mini the year before as sort of testing and setup, but still wasn't considered to be quick enough after that first rally, basically. And so we switched over to the Skoda for the rest of the year. What was that year like? It was pretty bittersweet. We had some pretty good wins. We had a few good wins in that year, and then we had a couple of really hard knocks in terms of we had a big accident in South Australia.
Yeah.
We had an issue with the car in Tasmania where we lost the win, but then we're eventually recredited the win post event.
Yeah.
And then Coffs, we had an incident on the first day and didn't finish the first leg. Luckily, the Super Rally rules meant we were able to get out and continue to complete the event and subsequently win the championship. But that was a good championship year that year overall, and of course, magic to win the championship. But yeah, it was bittersweet at times, that's for sure. As I'm sure it is for everybody in every year in competition.
There's always ups and downs. You could have won a title in 2016 with Simon Evans. Lots of ups and downs in that year. Queensland is one that comes to mind, with the rain and all that kind of stuff and the crash you had there. And also Rally Australia with the punctures and everything that happened across that weekend. Does it still hurt, given the ups and downs of that year, to miss out on that first one with Simon?
Yeah, definitely, because I'd been with Simon since 2012. So we'd been racing together for quite a long time and putting some ARC seasons together to be able to get to the end of 2016 and be so close yet so far to winning that championship. It really bit hard. We didn't help ourselves, though. We did have a couple of incidents throughout the year where we shouldn't have had those incidents, and probably that's in the end what cost us the championship. The lack of points coming from some of those other rallies where we should have got better results at. I think everyone had an up and down year that year that we were competing against, and it came down to that last rally. In fact, it came down to the last section of that rally in Coffs Harbour. I think we'd had a good first day, but then had two punctures on day two in Nambucca, both on the same stage. It was back when Nambucca was really long. And I think the first puncture we got was very early in the stage, where it goes from gravel onto some tarmac. There was a big hole there. We got a flat there, changed that, kept on going, and then further in, we were in someone's dust, and then further in the stage got another flat and stopped and changed that because there was still some 30 or 40 k's to go after the second flat. So yeah, we dropped way off the results sheet, I guess, for want of a better word, at that point. And then subsequently in the end, almost got the championship, just needed another place.
50-kilometre stages are getting rarer and rarer. You've done a few at Rally Australia that are 50k, like you mentioned, as a co-driver. I'm not sure whether you've done one as a driver or not. How do you manage the long stages like that? And of course, you did some at Rally the Heartland, which just sprigged into my memory then.
Yeah, yeah. So Rally of the Heartland had the 67K, and then we didn't make it to the 70K stage.
Mm,
It's definitely, you've got to break it up into, in my mind, I break it up into sections. You got into thirds or quarters,
mhm.
and then it's a really measured approach. In Heartland, we were really concerned that we wouldn't have enough fuel. And I think at the end of the day on that stage, there was 4 or 5 cars that were stopped within the last few Ks of the stage that had all just run out of fuel.
Wow.
With that event, the rules were that you could actually refuel the car anywhere you wanted, so long as it wasn't on someone's driveway or outside someone's house, I think it was. So we refueled. We took the opportunity to get a service crew member right to the time control of the stage and absolutely fill the car to the brim.
Yeah.
We didn't run anti-lag, and we detuned the car a little bit to make sure we would make it through because, yeah, it's only a 50-litre tank in the Evo and it uses a litre a kilometre in competition. So technically, the maths don't add up.
No, no, it doesn't quite add up. For 2023, your driving plans, like we've spoken about, is in South Australia. But your co-driver plans, of course, with Alex Rouleau in the West Australian Championship. You've competed in one event with him. Where do you think he's at? Can he be a national champion? Can he bring I guess, another cross, I guess, supercars competitor and Australian rally champion?
Yeah, look, I was really impressed with Alex. I think he did a really good job. The only rally we've done so far together is the Bakers Hill Rally, which is not a traditional style rally. So the
Yep.
stages were a hell of a lot shorter. He drove really well on that event. The car, he was still new to the car. He'd only just done Tasmania in the car, and there was still some fine tuning and some work that needed to be done on the car at that stage, which has been done now. And I think he showed that pace in the Forest Rally last weekend. So what you got to remember is with him, that was the first rally, Forest Rally, that he's done for the second time. So every other
Mhm.
rally he's done, he's only ever done for the first time and once. So yeah, look, I've been really impressed with him. His desire to want to do well and compete well. Hence why I agreed to compete with him this year. I think he definitely has a good future in the sport. He's got the right backers and he's got the right support there and he's got the right
Mhm.
car, good team. He's got everything that he needs to be successful. So yeah, I hope I can help him along the way.
Absolutely. And last year you competed in Indonesia with Rifat Sunkar. Is that on the cards again for you to head across there with him?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Mitsubishi didn't fund this year.
Mhm.
So we had some hopes to be able to do a few events this year, later in the year in the Asia Pacific series. But due to the global economic situation, they didn't fund the Expander
Mhm.
project for this season. But we still catch up, and we were talking about a rally just the other day to be able to compete in actually, but it hasn't eventuated either. But yeah, I think it would be great to be able to compete with him again in the future, I hope.
And he's a great guy to have around the sport, and he's so enthusiastic about rallying and spreading the word of it in Indonesia, of course. So it must be good to be alongside him and such a nice guy.
Oh, he's an absolute legend. Yeah, great fun. We had such a ball in those events that we did in the championship last year in Indonesia, and he's just the god of rally over there. I mean, when I rock up to the airport, you just get whisked straight through security. Oh, you're part of the Refat race team. Rally is kind of like a really popular sport there, kind of like what AFL might be here in Australia or NRL perhaps in the northern states. But yeah, he's really, really well known. He's got his face on half the billboards around the country and he's such cool fun and a great laugh to be around. Like you said, he's a great character and really, really good for the sport, really good promoter and really good ambassador for the sport.
Definitely. One last question. It's a bit left field, but it might have an obvious answer. If you could, would you have Ben Searcy to co-drive for yourself in the Mitsubishi? Do you think you'd like to have yourself calling calling notes for yourself?
I don't know if I'd tolerate myself.
Well, that's probably a good point.
I think there's we are really, really lucky in this state in Western Australia to have a whole pile of young people getting involved in the sport. And I don't know if you noticed when at the Forest Rally, but Brad, who's from Queensland, certainly noticed it with when he came over with me for Forest Rally, is that the amount of young people that are getting involved, both as drivers and co-drivers.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I really want to pass on as much of my knowledge and skills and expertise onto those young guys as possible, and get them as far as they possibly can go. There's a couple of them here in WA that are going to be good. They will be good as co-drivers. So, yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I see you get stuck in your ways, I guess. So trying to remain flexible, and not everyone does things the same way, but they still get the same result. And so if I can help people get the same result by assisting them with the journey that they take to get there, then that's all I can hope for.
And the young people is, I guess, a byproduct of having such a strong state championship. In Western Australia, there's 4 or 5 R5 cars that are competing in the state field. The fields are big. It's possibly one of the best state championships in the country at the minute.
Yeah, I think it's grown over the years, and certainly as when Rally 2 and R5 cars came out, WA were straight on board in terms of allowing them to compete in the championship, which some people didn't like. I think I advocate for anything to be able to compete, and if you want to bring those cars and they comply, then it's only going to make our championship look more professional and more serious, I guess, which will help everybody along the way. Obviously can't afford to compete in one of those sorts of cars, but to be able to compete against them and beat them, I think is pretty good. But I think I was thinking about this the other day, the WA Championship's been pace noted since as long as I can remember, the whole championship. I think that's what's been really good about this championship. 6 or 7 rallies throughout the year that are all pace noted, all running good conditions and good roads, really develops and nurtures people's skills and knowledge, and the experience that they get from doing that. So I think if the championship can continue along that way, it'll have a good, strong and solid future.
I'm sure it will. And the excitement about people going across to the Forest Rally, the numbers from the East Coast that went across shows the quality of the roads and the great rallying pedigree and history, of course, that's in Western Australia that brought you into the sport, of course. So thank you so much for your time, Ben Searcy. It's been great to have a chat. Not so many good results this year thus far, but let's hope for a stronger second half of the season and a Mitsubishi that's on song in the state championship in South Australia.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure being here, and yeah, let's hope so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.